Alright, we're recording. Is it 28? Yes, story 28 of Grimm's Fairy Tales, which is Hansel and Gretel, which is one of the longer ones it seems in here, and certainly one plenty of people are familiar with. At least parts of it, though. Because I've mentioned before, it was actually because of a video game. I looked it up, saw some stuff about its history, but then actually reading at least this version of it, it's like, oh, something that is actually straight written here, such as the whole, it being a famine, the time of scarcity, so they need to, that's why there's this concern about the parents being unsure how to feed the kids. Although, small correction there, how the father, because it's father and stepmother, which is actually a little interesting, because it does kind of bounce. At some points, she's referred to as stepmother, at other points as mother. I do get that, yes, you would eventually drop step. I get that. But still, it's interesting how in the story, it's not as clearly stated throughout. Anyway, he's just lamenting, what do we do? She's like, well, we leave them in the forest, ban them in the forest so they die. He's like, no, I couldn't do that. And then she just nags at him until he finally consents. It also comes up later because this only happens twice. We don't have it happening 3 times. The second time, he again doesn't really want to do this and is even musing that it'd be better to share a final mouthful with the children. And she's basically saying, you yielded before. You're yielding this time too. That you're already trapped. It's like, no, he could refuse. He could say, no, I can't ever do that again. Good, but doesn't. Anyhow, first time, because the kids are so hungry, they hear the plans. Gretel starts crying. Hansel's like, don't worry, I'll take care of this. And it is, at one point, it is stated she is the little sister, so older brother taking care of the little sister. So they, he goes out in the middle of the night, picks up a bunch of white stones nearby the house, which, in the moonlight, they shine, it describes them as silver coins. That's how they look. So he fills his pockets with those. So now when they go out, he will periodically stop and toss one out on the road, so when the moon is out again, they'll be able to see it and follow the way back. Now, every time he stops, and this is actually a little important for a couple reasons at least, he stops to drop one of the stones. The reason he gives when questioned is he's looking back at the house, because first he says, I see my cat there on the roof wanting to say goodbye, and later it's the pigeon. Both times the mother says, no, it's not. Well, stepmother says, no, it's not. That's the sun appearing between the chimneys. Not entirely sure how to interpret it, which I will get to later, why it is actually potentially meaningful there. But anyway, they go in. The dad does something that's actually, like, it's clever, but cold, man. He sets up, because they say, okay, we'll build a fire here so you kids are safe. Then we're going to go, and we adults going to go into the forest and collect wood. They actually mean to abandon them, but in order to keep the kids comfortable, what he does, he rigs up a stick, so as the wind blows, it smashes against a tree, so it sounds like chopping wood. Like, oh, Dad's nearby, we don't need to worry. They fall asleep. Wake up in the middle of the night. Gretel is crying. But Hansel's like, don't worry, calm down. Once the full moon is out. See, look, we'll see it. These stones, we can make it home now. So they do. And when they get there, the stepmother, yells at them for staying out so late. She's annoyed. And the father just throws his arms around them and rejoices that they're returning, because he didn't want them to die. Because he's actually a good person. Mostly. I mean, if he were a better person, he would have said, honey, no, shut up. We ain't doing it. But he relents twice. So anyway, they come back. And now, it ends up happening again. Wait, there's another famine, another time of scarcity. So they have to plan out. Oh, so again, the stepmother has said, nags him until he says yes. Again, the kids hear this, but Hansel, the door is locked. He can't get out to collect the stone. So it's like, okay, I'll just use the bread. They were given some bread, break it up and leave the crumbs, large crumbs, to find his way back. But all the birds in the forest come and eat it, so there's no path back. Which I think is very interesting, because the whole we refer to things as breadcrumbs, like leaving breadcrumbs so you can find your way back. It's like, that is literally the thing that fails because it's breadcrumbs. I mean, it is just funny how it's like, that's what's stuck into the lexicon. And, you know what? Hang on just a second. Okay. BR. I'm just curious. If I look up breadcrumb. Nope. Okay. We do not have breadcrumb in this, but this is in, well, not so much that it's old, an old dictionary, but it's a pocket-sized one, so that might be. But I would not have been surprised if it actually included breadcrumb, including as the definition of way back. But it still is. That doesn't work. That's what fails. Anyhow, I mean, this is a video game series. I would most recommend the first one, Dead Space, and I've not played the remake of that. But Dead Space 1, 2, and 3. Dead Space 1, straight up actual good horror game. Dead Space 2 kind of turns towards being more action, but I mean, it's okay. Dead Space 3, it's not so good. Anyway, there's a system in it where you can stop and have a line projected on the ground for where you need to go. In the actual menu for that, like the to like set what the button should be, it even says that refers to it as breadcrumbs. Also, by the way, I just want to add this, and I have no idea because this is a Steam controller. I know a lot of people made fun of it. But I really like it. I think there's many things to its design that were nice. One thing is that you have different actions that you can assign to the triggers here. I know this, I'm really, really far afield, but so you can have one action when you are just pulling it down, so the analog, but there's a, you hear that? There's also a button down there. That was great for Dead Space, because you have to hit a button to bring up the gun, and then another button to fire. I mapped the bringing up to just pulling in the trigger at all, and then that was, I don't know if that's actually going to be picked up through the audio processing, but the actual click of the button was firing. It worked out great. I loved that. I get why people criticize the Steam controller. I do. But legitimately, Valve, make a version 2. There are elements of that design that, like that, I love that feature. Also, how some of the angles are. I have large hands. That is way more comfortable for me than, I got DualShock 4 here. I've also got an old 360 controller down there, but that one's hard to use just because it's got like a 10-foot long thick cable. Yeah, DualShock 4 does have a nice weight to it, but I don't like the symmetrical design. I like the asymmetrical. Anyhow. Yeah, the Steam controller, though, its size is so much more comfortable in my hands. Anyhow, so, yeah. Now the kids are lost because there's no breadcrumbs there. They're not like Isaac. They can't just scan them. That's the character in Dead Space. Anyhow, so they just start wandering, and it's actually 3 days. And it's basically, unless a miracle happens, we're dead. They see a white bird that landed near them, and then it flies off, and they follow it, and it leads them to the witch's house. Which, I mean, okay, yeah, they're starving, so they're immediately trying to grab the pieces of the house to eat. It's still rude, but it's understandable. And the witch knew that they were coming. In fact, it even describes that she made the house to entice children so she can eat them. Yeah. So, it's like, oh, no, don't worry. Come on inside. I'll give you a nice meal. Gives them a nice meal. Puts them in nice beds. And then wakes up Hansel, brings him out to the stable, and locks him in there so she can start fattening him up, which she compels Gretel to help with. So Hansel's being fattened. Gretel is being given, what did it say, crab shells, I think? So not good food. I believe it was crab shell. It's also referenced that witches have red eyes. There's something else to their eyes that I want to get to. Yeah, but Gretel got nothing but crab shells. Now, Hansel continues to be clever here. because the witch comes every day to see if he's been fattened. And it's like, give me your hand, to feel how much fat is there. And by the way, there's no mention of how fat he gets, which I find a little disappointing, but in any case. He instead hands her a bone each time, so she thinks he's too lean still, and continues to be fed. And this goes for a month. It says 4 weeks of this, which is why I'm kind of curious just how fattened he is. But then she's finally fed up and it's like, Gretel, it doesn't matter how lean or fat he is, I'm killing him tomorrow and eating him. And so she starts crying and is told that she has to fill the cauldron with water and put it over the fire so it starts heating. And then when she gets back, the witch tells her, okay, now we're going to do baking first, because it's I'm actually going to bake you. So fire started, climb in there and make sure it's hot enough, or something like that. But Gretel isn't stupid. She does know what's going to happen, and she's like, how do I get in there? I don't know how to get in there. And the witch is eventually like, it's an oven. It's not hard to climb in here. Let me show you. See, I can stick my head. Ah! And then Gretel pushes her, locks the door, and she burns to death. Now, one thing that did occur to me is it is interesting how Gretel is not described as being caged at all, or otherwise restrained. The witch is just dominant over her, while Hansel has to be caged. It is somewhat interesting because of the idea that he, being a boy, might be more inclined to fight, so has to be restrained, while Gretel, being a girl, is less likely to, and also younger. But it is still, she does see what's happening and does, in fact, she actually saves both of them by doing this. But at the same time, though, she's been submissive throughout for these 4 weeks. She's been submissive to the dominant witch, who, old, but still an adult, so physically likely stronger, more capable than she is. It's just interesting because the whole technically, Gretel saves them both. So it's like, that almost makes this a modern story, but please don't give Hollywood that idea. They'll do it in some dumbass way. But it does also show, even in fairy tales, either sex can save the other. It's just, does it make sense? Is kind of the question. It makes sense for Gretel, because she was there, she could. Goes for Hansel. They're like, great. They eat more, they search around the house, find a whole bunch of riches, and like, taking these with us. At least as much as they can carry. Get home. They start going home, because they were lost, but basically once they pick a way, and I guess also because they're well fed at this point, they ultimately come to parts of the forest that are more familiar to them. There's a stream they can't cross. Apparently a large stream then. But there's a duck there. And they're like, hey, Mr. Duck, will you ferry us across? And the duck says yes. Hansel's just been fattened and is going to sit on the duck's back to get across. What the hell kind of duck is this? I'm wondering what the symbolism there is, but... Well... Okay, no, that could work. That could actually work for the symbolism. Because there's even the question of when they find the gingerbread house. Which it actually doesn't say it's gingerbread, just bread and cakes. But in any case, with finding the house, the witch's house, there's a question of, are we in heaven? So, potentially, what we're actually to interpret here is that they basically did die. That they did in fact die in the woods. That they were in this demonic location that had the witch. But has managed to defeat her, kill her, and is now returning to the world of living. And that's the crossing of the river. I could see it being something like that. That it is the return from this land beyond kind of thing. But they do that, eventually find their way home. Their dad is super excited that they're there to finally have them back. Thought that they were lost, thought they were dead, all that. And also says, and your stepmother's dead. Now, this is why and I forgot to mention the other thing. The stepmother looking back and being like, that's not your cat, that's not your pigeon, that's the sun coming between the chimneys. That could be setting up that she has poor eyesight. Which, because it's, as I know I've talked about before, some interpretations of Hansel and Gretel do state the witch is actually the stepmother. So, yeah. That would be supportive of that. Also, the fact that the mother and the witch are both dead at the end of the story. In some ways, I'm good with that. The idea that the witch is a stepmother, at least symbolically, because the stepmother wanted them dead so she may live. The witch wants to kill them so she may feast on them and live. So there are definite similarities there. But it is described that witches not only have poor eyesight, very good senses of smell, poor eyesight, but also red eyes. The mother's never described as having red eyes. It's not described as having a good sense of smell either. So, but the other thing that I find interesting with the whole them getting lost in the woods, and I get that they could have been circuitous paths. I get that, but if it is the sun coming up over the house, you at least know you need to go east. So, yeah. I'm sorry, it just is one of those things. It's like they live not far from a forest, and they apparently don't play enough in it to know their way around? I'm sorry, but that just seems a little bit of a problem, because, I mean, there would be, I can believe there are plenty of more or less real life Hansel and Gretels today that live near forests that could, even if their parents work in the forest, the kids might know it better than them. So, yeah, yeah, it's a store. It's a store. But still. Is there a moral here? I'm not sure. I guess dads, stand up to your wives when they want to kill your kids. I mean, it's like, don't let that happen. It might just be a story, but it is also, as I know I've said in previous times when just talking about some of these fairy tales, it is recording the idea of a time of great scarcity, a time when there's famine, but also the idea that then of cannibalism as a solution to it. And the witch with the whole red eyes, weak eyes, stuff like that, is a demonic figure in some ways. Or at least a non-human figure. And she is the cannibal. So it does make some sense as far as recording that and ensuring that the idea of cannibalism is being taught as wrong. It does seem odd that it needs to be taught. You'd think that that would be one of those things that is generally just held by the species in the whole genetic memory concept. Which I'm not sure how much I want to believe that that's a thing, but well, I mean, there is instinct. I just don't know how much something like that is necessarily in there, and that's not a. I have doubts that that's in. I'm just not sure exactly how that concept of instinctual memory, genetic memory. I'm just not sure how some of that works. Like, so maybe at some point I'll try researching that concept, because that's what I'm ignorant of. And there's other things as well that are also in there, but yeah. So, but it could have been a way of recording that these times have happened before. Cannibalism is still wrong. Don't do it. And maybe also a certain amount of preparation, like kids. Be prepared to get yourselves back home. Be prepared to be the one that saves you. Because it's also true. It's not like in, say, Little Red Riding Hood, where the huntsman comes in and saves them. Hansel saved them from the parents. Gretel saved them from the witch. There also might be some symbolism to that. That it was Gretel that saved them again from the witch, from that, as I said, demonic figure. So that actually might be part of this too. But yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, one other thing that also occurred to me when I was reading it was, where's the witch getting the food? I'm okay with her having the wealth with her. I'm okay with that, because, like, I mean, she may have been eating a lot of people and just collecting that stuff, like many monsters do. But where's she getting the food? It's like crab shells. Where are the crabs? Yeah, so that I am a little curious about. But in any case, it's that is what it is. But yeah, it still is interesting to read. And as I said, I find it so funny. It has invaded the lexicon with the concept of oh yeah, there's also that with the concept of breadcrumbs, but it's wrong. I forgot to mention one thing, that this would also go along with the the witch being a non-human figure is red eyes, very strong sense of smell, poor, weak eyes. She also gets around on crutches. So she also has a physically broken body. Yeah, I just... Suddenly the door opened and a very, very old woman who supported herself on crutches came creeping out. Do we have more than that as the description? Witches have red eyes and cannot see far, but they have a keen scent like the beasts and are aware when human beings draw near. Okay. That's also interesting. When Hansel and Gretel came into her neighborhood, she laughed maliciously and said mockingly, I have them. They shall not escape me again. So again, that may be the suggestion that this is the mother. That the mother tried to have them be lost so she could take them and eat them. It is not unreasonable that idea that at least there are breadcrumbs in the story showing potential links that the witch is connected to them already, which that only leaves the stepmother, because there's no other figure that it could be. So yeah, it is interesting. It is interesting. I do kind of wonder then, because this is one translation from the Grimm's version, or at least one of Grimm's versions, because they may have been collecting and refining them over years, like putting out multiple editions of their collection of fairy tales. So I do kind of wonder how some of the earlier versions are, and like what was combined together, what wasn't, things like that. Because it is also, as I had mentioned before when I'd done that research because of a video game, not Dead Space, different game. I don't remember what it is now, to be honest. I did also mention of there's many versions of the Hansel and Gretel story throughout Eastern Europe. Not necessarily under that same name, but you would recognize them. And so you can tell that they're all from one, which is part of the reason why it's this very possibly is in fact recording times of famine in there, because the famine would have hit a very large area. And so you saw this story either appear in multiple places or spread out, or appear in multiple places, come together, they kind of get mashed together, and then spread out again as a single, more homogenous story then. So it would be interesting to see how some of those are, and if some of those then make it more clear or less clear that the stepmother is the witch, things like that. So yeah, it would be interesting to see that. But that gets into work that I don't really do. For one thing, I don't do translations. But there are people that do that stuff, so I do kind of wonder. About that. In fact, you know what? I'll even say this. I don't know how many people would read them, but you could probably, with a lot of these stories, because of the folk nature of them, I could believe that there could be people out there that write entire books this thick, maybe even thicker, just on the one story, all the different versions of it, where those versions are from, the history of those versions, and trying to provide the development of those stories and what all the connections are between them, what is and is not significant, why one culture may view one thing as significant and another culture not. Yeah, I could believe that could exist. I don't know if it does. Would be very interesting if it does, though. I don't know if I'd want to commit to reading any, but it's very fascinating. I hope it does exist because it would be fascinating. All right. See you next time for The Golden Bird. I also just want to quickly see how long that one is. It is also a decent length, yeah. Quite a few pages. And then we get to The Raven, which I'm sure is not like the Edgar Allan Poe movie. Edgar Allan Poe story, which also got made into a movie with Vincent Price, Boris Karloff, and Peter Lorre. It's an interesting one. I recommend it. It's a lot of fun. Not necessarily a great deal like the Edgar Allan Poe story, but it is still a fun movie. And there's some funny history to it as well, funny stories to it, because Peter Lorre liked to ad-lib. Boris Karloff was very traditional. He stuck to the script. Vincent Price, fortunately, was comfortable with both and could mediate between them. But, yeah, no, it's also a very early Jack Nicholson film. But no, it's a fun, enjoyable, entertaining movie. So, yeah. All right. See you next time.